Former NHL player Brent Sopel has been telling people about a defining moment in his childhood. He recalls the time he was asked to read in front of his ninth grade class. For a lot of people, that's not a big deal. For Sopel, he calls it one of the worst days of his life.
When you're surrounded by your peers and you're not on the same level as them. Obviously kids aren't
Sopel was diagnosed with dyslexia. It is a neurobiological condition that affects someone's ability to read and write. Sopel turned to hockey in order to survive and thrive. But in the documentary you just saw called Brent Sopel, Here to Change the World, he says winning the Stanley Cup feels empty, and his condition led him down a dark path. Newsy's Austin Kim spoke with Sopel earlier this week. Austin, why did he open up and do this documentary?
Well, Lauren, Brent Sopel says he wants to help others with dyslexia. Now, Sopel's foundation says roughly 40 million people are dyslexic. That's according to some studies. But in actuality, only 2 million people are diagnosed. And Brent Sopel did not get diagnosed until he was 32 years old. Now, leading up to that, he said he was a bully when he was younger. And then as he got older, during and after, as he became an adult, he developed a substance abuse problem, which he says he is now recovering from. Now, my conversation with him touched on the struggle with dyslexia, but we also looked at what's needed to help those with this learning disability, especially as schools look to reopen during the pandemic. What was your reading level when you were in high school?
I was at a grade 4 level. So it was, and that's the biggest thing that I talk about with dyslexia is self-esteem. When you're reading at that grade level and you're in high school, obviously it's tough enough to be a kid and a teenager already and struggling on the simplest things, which most people find simple, but for us it's not. And that's again why I tell this story, is that to tell these kids that you can do it and you're not alone. And I've been there, I am there. And no matter when you're in the middle of a battle, whatever battle that is, you always think you're alone. But just trying to tell each kid, and even parents and adults that are struggling too, that you're not alone.
I could go on and on about your hockey accolades, and I know that's a big reason why we're talking to you, and you have the Stanley Cup ring, and that's great. But when did hockey go from being an escape to a platform?
It came after the game of hockey. Hockey for me wasn't a sport, it wasn't a job, it was a lifeline. That's where I got my self-esteem from. And when that game left after 18 years pro, and the real world was staring me in the face, this is when it really became a platform for me. And I had to get sober to be okay with who I am and be okay with struggling with the simplest things, but knowing that I can do other things better than others. So it definitely came after hockey. Hockey's been great. Yeah, the Stanley Cup. It's amazing to be one of those individuals to have a Stanley Cup. But that's why we're having this conversation. But I want to be known for my work after hockey and dyslexia and my foundation for sure.
What are some of the considerations that you hope any school official around the world, frankly, can take into account when they are trying to educate students with dyslexia?
Well, you're right. First and foremost, is safety. And obviously that's the biggest concern. How many people are going to school, how many days, but just to understand if you've got a learning disorder, to try and sit and pay attention to a laptop or an iPad screen, it doesn't work. It's not feasible. It's not going to be there. So finding a way to have that interaction in a classroom with the teacher, of dyslexia is a lot of touch and feel. That's why you have a lot of athletes and musicians and actors and actresses and architects. There's no touch and feel in a computer screen or iPad. So how can we find a way to get them to school safely as much as we can? I know it's not easy, but that is very, very important.
Brent Sopel says he wants to talk to as many lawmakers here in the U.S. as possible so he can eventually get legislation passed to help those with this learning disability. And right now, during this pandemic, Brent Sopel says he is opening up his DMs to as many young people as possible who are struggling with dyslexia. He told me before our chat that he was going to be on the phone and texting with kids diagnosed with dyslexia so he could help them through their journey. But again, that documentary is called Brent Sopel, Here to Change the World. You can stream it right now on YouTube. Lauren, what a story. We appreciate Brent Sopel opening up to us as well.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's an incredible story, and the work that he's doing is so important. But that last question you asked him and about the intersection with COVID-19 and, students going back to school, I think it's definitely an appropriate time to really push and advocate. Newsy's Austin Kim, thanks so much.